Welcome to another episode of Cinema Dream. We had an issue where we reviewed Benedetta, but the audio file got screwed up, so it just didn't work out. So this one is going to be a redo. It's gonna be a lot more brief, might even be a bit scattershot because we recorded, what was it, a week ago?
Yep.
Yeah, the first that was you alright? I thought you died. The first recording was over a week ago. Just a quick synopsis. Benedetta is about a young woman that is brought to a convent, which is like a
Nunnery?
a compound. Yeah, I keep thinking that nunnery isn't a word.
It's a word.
Okay, she's brought to a nunnery to grow up and be a nun.
Makes sense so far.
Yeah, and from the get-go, it's shown that Benedetta is, I would argue, wise beyond her years. Would you?
No.
Really? I thought that we can get into that in a bit. So she goes to this nunnery and she gets dressed by this older nun who's telling her that her intelligence is, I guess, for lack of better words and paraphrasing, admirable, but it can get her into trouble as well, which is kind of like foreshadowing into how Benedetta acts around others and how others view Benedetta. So there's a huge time leap from there. Benedetta's a lot older, and there's a moment that occurs which brings into the question of, does this woman have a stronger connection to God than the rest of us? Is she the proper wife of Jesus when compared to the other nuns? Is she mystical in some sort of way? Because there's a statue of Jesus that she's praying to that falls on her, but somehow it doesn't crush her when
That
it
was
should have.
the Virgin Mary.
Yes, I said Jesus. The statue of the Virgin Mary falls on her, but it doesn't crush her. And some people write it off, but a lot of people are curious. So more time passes on, and a woman is trying to escape her father, who's abusive. Her name is Bartolomea. The compound accepts her. I say compound. The nunnery accepts her.
Oh, nunnery is a compound?
Bartolomea has a very abusive past. She is, in my opinion, looking for someone to love her. It doesn't have to be platonic. It doesn't have to be sensual or sexual. She's just looking for someone to love her. And obviously, they're all females. They're nuns. Lesbianism is something that's frowned upon within this time period, yeah? Especially in this setting. Maybe even now in this setting, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be a lesbian and a nun.
So Bartolomea is kind of captured by Benedetta. Instantly, she kisses Benedetta, and then from there, it sets off like a chain of events. So their relationship paired with the mysticism or non-mysticism, is it real, is it not, of Benedetta's, I guess, spiritualness, all wrapped in the atmosphere of a town that is plagued by an ever-approaching plague. You know,
Sickness, illness, disease.
These weren't on purpose. I just want to point.
It's a lot for a movie to juggle.
Yeah, and that's one of my issues. So that's a summary. It doesn't quite capture the essence of Benedetta fully, but it's gonna have to do for now. So with that being said, let's quickly hop into it. It's pretty late. Mad Cat, did you find this film enjoyable, unenjoyable, somewhat enjoyable, or somewhat unenjoyable?
Somewhat enjoyable.
Okay. I found this film somewhat enjoyable. Did your answer change from the first time I asked you in the initial recording?
I couldn't remember. Yours didn't.
Yours did.
Okay.
Yeah, before it was just enjoyable, which is interesting now, right? I've been yammering a lot, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Benedetta. I'm just going to get it all out, and then you have the floor to wrap it up, Matt Cat. Benedetta juggles a lot of things. It throws a lot of things at the wall. My issue with the film is not even that they don't stick necessarily, is that the film doesn't care if it sticks. I think it's important to note that this director also did RoboCop and Showgirls, and what was the other one that I was telling you? Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've never seen RoboCop. Matt Cat has seen Showgirls. I've seen Starship Troopers. I assume Matt Cat has probably
I've seen Starship Troopers.
Okay. So I can barely remember it. But what it does is look at the things that are good about Catholicism and the things that maybe should change about Catholicism, yeah? And it looks at how humans abuse religious texts and use them in ways for their own selfish benefits, yeah? But the issues that they bring up in this film is not exclusive to Catholicism. It can be found in all religions, yeah?
So when you say it shows the good things about Catholicism, from the perspective of the movie, what are the good things about Catholicism?
I think that the devotion to faith and how if you are not abusing that faith, then it can lead you to be one that is generally, I would assume, a good person, a kind, caring person who puts the needs of others before oneself. The issue is that not every character does this. I don't think the woman that's suffering from some disease that's causing the decay of one of her breasts, I don't think she put her needs before others. I think she was a very devoted person. I think that a lot of the background characters were very devoted in their beliefs as far as like the nuns go. Yeah. And then the more, what's the word I'm looking for? The characters that were more in focus,
Main character?
they can be the ones that were kind of abusive. With Benedetta, it could be a question mark, right? The things I enjoyed about this film, I think the woman that plays Benedetta, she's a French actress. Can you remind me of her name?
Virginie? I don't remember her last name. F? There was an F in it. Etheria.
What he said. So I think she does a flawless job playing the character of Benedetta because watching this film, it doesn't seem like an easy role to do. I think that the woman that plays the, how would you say? Or I would say Abbess, but you would say Abbess. I'm probably the wrong one in that. I think she does excellent in the film. I like the dichotomy between the Abbess and Benedetta. The Abbess is the, I guess, the head nun
The
of
Mother
the.
Superior.
I knew you was gonna do that.
That's that's the term
Don't
you're looking
lie.
for.
You felt excitement saying that. Yes or no?
It's a fun series of words to say.
So I think that the dichotomy between her and Benedetta is excellent. I enjoyed the sort of like restrained back and forth between them. I think the back and forth between the abbess and the other central religious fixture who was a male, I don't know his proper title, forgive me.
The Nuncio.
Wasn't that the head guy that came over?
Oh yeah, yeah. Who are you? You're talking about
I'm talking
this?
about the
The
guy that's
father,
below him that was trying, not the father. The father was the one
the
that lived.
abbot.
Yes, I enjoyed their kind of rivalry. It wasn't a lot of love, it was a lot of hate, but it was like work hate type relationship that they have with each other.
Work hate.
I found it enjoyable how Benedetta examined how unfair the world was. Still is, but it's better than what it used to be, but it's still got a ways to go. How unfair the world was towards women back then, and I enjoy seeing how different women in that time period navigate a very vicious world that's not comforting towards them. My issues with Benedetta is that the themes that it brings up, sexuality and where does it belong in Christianity, women and their role in Christianity, and is it one of servitude and discrimination, or is it one of servitude but with equal footing amongst the male counterparts? The abuse of religion and depending on how you abuse it, if it makes it more acceptable versus it not making it more acceptable. I think that these themes are great as a start. Oh, it also deals with motherhood and choosing one's job as abbess versus choosing one's job as a mother and how that can affect your offspring. All these things are great when you see them on paper, but as far as how it's handled in the film, it's not handled with care. That's what I wanted to say last time. That's the easiest way to say it. It doesn't seem concerned with the fact that it's not approaching these serious topics with thought and care. You know, I know you felt that the film had some moments where it was very jovial, and it did, but it also had moments where it would switch shifts in tone. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So it will go from very sexual to possibly romance, depending on how you see it. Sexual, romance, drama, anger, angst, for lack of a better term, spiritualness. And then it had a lot of goofy moments. But all of those things that are serious, there is a character in this film that takes her life. All of these things that are serious are undercut by the film's lack of focus to give things the proper handle that they need. And that's what's so frustrating for me with Benedetta. I enjoy the film and I'm not Christian, but I do have respect for multiple religions. I'm not religious at all,
Of course you do.
but I grew up extremely religious. And I feel like this film just doesn't respect any of that. This film seems more concerned with throwing up the middle finger and saying, haha, look at me. It's like the young anarchist that doesn't understand why they are an anarchist. They just see other people doing it and they're like, yeah, anarchy. But they don't have anything on their own. They don't have any beliefs or thoughts that they can form on their own. They're just causing chaos to get attention. And that's what Benedetta feels like. And it shouldn't. And it didn't have to feel that way. But ultimately, it did. I enjoyed it, but it's disrespectful. Now you got the floor.
I do think that it's in some ways trying to say things. For instance, you talked about motherhood, how it has themes of motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And considering that one of the main characters takes their life, it seems to me to be pushing towards a very finite decision on one's duty, if it's to your God or your country versus your family, your daughter.
Yeah.
It seems like it would have been much better had she chosen her daughter over anything else in her life.
Yeah.
If I just look at what happened in the movie. So, in certain ways, it seems like it does have a point that you can discern. In other ways, it doesn't want to give you like a straight answer, which sometimes can be appreciated, like we were talking about in The Lighthouse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When I get to the end of the movie, I want to say this after thinking about it, not just because you mentioned it,
Mm-hmm.
because I was already like, I don't remember. After thinking about it a lot, I would change my answer to enjoyed as opposed to somewhat enjoyed. And when I thought about it, because I had to rethink about the scenes in the movie as opposed to just rethinking about what we were talking about in the last review,
Mm-hmm.
and rethinking about the scenes in the movie, I was thinking I was having so much fun during the movie. Now, you think that it presented a lot of topics that were very serious, not seriously, because of what it added that wasn't serious, like putting these things like serving, filet mignon with like macaroni and cheese from the blue box, right?
What's that poisonous fish? It's blowfish, yeah?
Yeah.
You have to have like a license to serve blowfish. It's like serving blowfish without a license, and you never even filleted a fish before in your entire life.
So you think it can be harmful to people?
Yeah, there's a question that I want to ask you, but it's personal, and I know that I'm not personal, so it feels wrong. I'm gonna ask it, and
I
if you don't want
consider
to
you
answer,
personal.
just definitely not. But the thing is,
Sad.
you grew up Christian too, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you have any, and I'm not saying it has to be hate, but do you have any
Resentment.
of Christianity due to how you were raised Christian?
I wouldn't say resentment. I would say I definitely, the way that I feel about the Christian church
Mhm.
now is not anywhere near one of reverence. I do appreciate, like, I always wanted that T-shirt. I'm gonna have to make that T-shirt because they probably don't sell it anywhere. I envision a T-shirt that says "I love Jesus like I love Batman," right?
Mhm.
Because I don't look at Jesus as necessarily a figure of, like, when I read the Bible, I'm not looking at it as a historical text as much as I used to, right? But I still look at it in terms of like the idea of this good guy, this hero, a good man is still valuable in my life, right?
Mhm.
And so I appreciate the stories and I appreciate things about Christianity, but I also see things about Christianity that are flawed. It's a much more complex view of it than I used to have,
Right.
So when I see a movie like this, it certainly is more like it certainly is more like Dogma than maybe it should have been, because Dogma is not a serious movie, right? But a lot of people look at Dogma and eschew guidance about Christianity from it, right? Because it adds in a lot of the
I've never seen Dogma.
well, maybe you should.
That's the issue with you bringing up pop culture references so much. It's that
Well,
other people
that
haven't
that
seen
could
them.
be an issue, or it could inspire people to look something up. Dogma is a Jay and Silent Bob comedy. That's a hint.
Maybe resent is not the word. I don't know if angst is, but do you have any holdover feelings? Like even if it's 1% or 2% negative,
There are some negative feelings about Christianity.
and that's totally fine. Yeah. But the reason why I ask this is because in my head, this is a delicate topic. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
And I think that maybe you don't respect the delicacy of the topic like I do.
Well, I'm open minded to that possibility.
I'm not one of those people where it's like, oh, this is off limits. Yeah. But
Mhm.
the best way I can describe this, maybe the feeling that this film gave me, this is going to sound like I hate the film, and I don't. I said it was somewhat enjoyable, but I was also repulsed. And the feeling that I have, let's take two historical figures that are very important to people. Yeah. Martin Luther King, that's
Mhm.
one, and Anne Frank, that's two. Okay.
Okay.
Imagine seeing a film titled Anne Frank Martin Luther King Zombie Wars, where they're both zombies. And then it's got like some goofy characters that's like, we gotta kill Martin Luther King.
I'm a fan of the idea of the story for Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Yeah, but not everybody holds him in a high light.
Yeah, but the idea of that is the conflict between this thing that is historical and, prestigious.
But I would argue that Abraham Lincoln does not mean to the world what it means to certain Americans. I'm not saying that he's not important. Let's say they did a Mother Teresa or a Gandhi film.
Oh
Okay.
man.
And then they treated it like this. It's fucking tacky. It's very important how you do it. And some people are going to be okay with it like you, and some people are not like me.
Of
And
course.
I'm going to bring up Dave Chappelle. Not everything that's going on with Dave Chappelle, but specifically where Dave Chappelle might take a topic that's taboo
Hmm.
or typically a no no, and
Hmm.
he'll build his jokes around it. But there's
Hmm.
always a message in it, whether you agree with it or not. He seems to approach it for the most part.
Delicately.
And some people might call it crass, but I mean, comedy is comedy. He's not just going up, just making a punchline and then walking off stage. There's a story, there are messages, there are metaphors, and overall, there's an attempt to create understanding. Maybe the road is rough to understanding, but there's an attempt. Benedetta does not handle with care. It takes these delicate topics that mean so much to people, this delicate figure, this delicate thing that people devote their lives to. And yes, there are issues with the church. There are many horrible things that the church has done, but there's also really good things. And you're taking something that's really severe and you're just making a mockery of it. All you're doing is being a provocateur, and it feels childish and it's frustrating because I know it could have still been funny, it could have still been thought provoking, it could have still been engaging, and it could have been respectful at the same time while still poking fun at stuff. A good example is Sacha Baron Cohen. I've only seen the second Borat, yeah. It's hilarious. But it shows all these themes and it presents it with a comedy that's very well thought out. You can see he did all his work. You can see he points out the issues with these things, and you can see how ridiculous they are. And you can see the answers that he gives sometimes. I'm not saying that this film needed to give a whole bunch of answers, but this film just doesn't feel concerned at all with its subject matter. It just doesn't. I know I said I would let you go, so now I apologize. I'll let you go.
There, you're giving me loads upon loads of stuff to talk about. So, when you look at this character, whew, how much am I going to talk about? When you look at this character, Benedetta, first of all, when I went into this movie, I didn't know this was a real person from history.
Mhm.
So imagine my surprise, the huge plot twist at the end when they had those slow words come on the screen. It's like, oh, this is what Benedetta did for the rest of her life. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is crazy. Because I was looking at it like a superhero origin story. Where, like, look at this person who came and shook things up like nobody would actually do in real life. Benedetta, the character, though. The character in the movie is a complex character. And I feel like whenever you make a movie about a real historical person, you kind of have to be more complex than your average Spider-Man movie, for instance, because there's going to be people, maybe family members, maybe just people, members of the church that can come out and rightly so have gripes with it, right?
Yeah.
And so I appreciated how, and I know you might laugh if I call this delicate. I appreciate how they walked a line with Benedetta where I never knew, and I'm a gullible person, I'll tell you right now, but I never knew if she was a villain or a hero. And that's kind of kept me going throughout the movie. And I appreciated at the end of the movie, I was still like, I don't know, is she the hero of the story or is she the villain? And I feel like that was a very wise way to go about it. I think when I look about it, because what was interesting, you said, oh, it shows some good things in the church and it shows some bad things about the church. I don't know if you just said that because to be nice with the movie.
No, I meant it.
I'm surprised you said that because I didn't see it saying very many nice things about the church. If I had to assume, I would say the filmmaker was atheist, which is ironic because if you think about it, like we have all these things, like certain things you're supposed to say only if you're of a certain group. You can make fun of your own race. You can make fun of your own.
I never agree with that, but go on.
Well, I'm not going to say I didn't make up the rules, but that seems like what most people agree with, right?
Yeah.
And so I can understand people being more spiteful because, like, here's someone from outside saying, hey, look at the church. Isn't this silly? That's
So
more inflammatory.
do you know that you said you
I
didn't
don't
know if he was
know.
atheist.
I don't know that he's atheist.
Okay. I just want to say if he was atheist, I don't feel like that would mean that he is not qualified to
If he was
direct a
Christian, do you
Benedetta.
think that would be better?
I don't care.
Because you're talking about how there's certain subjects that should be handled with certain care.
The guy that did Midnight Mass, he was hella Christian, which is why that feels so. For me, watching Midnight Mass, I was like, this is really authentic. Like all these characters, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you feel like he approached those themes in Midnight Mass with respect and delicacy while showing the positives and the negatives of it?
Yes. The Midnight Mass, well, let me think about Midnight Mass for a second. Because when I was watching Midnight Mass, I was watching because, I've been to Catholic church, I've been to a Lutheran church, I've been to a Protestant church, right? And when I was watching Midnight Mass, there are a lot of things in it. People are giving people advice, people are spouting scripture, and it all sounds very loving and very good a lot of the time. But obviously, for what it was used for through a lot of that movie, was not leading to a good place, right? It was sometimes used as an excuse, like, oh, this Bible verse says this, so we're on the right track, right? And so I saw it a lot as a cautionary tale of like, yeah, these words sound good, but that doesn't mean you should follow them, you know? It didn't seem like to me it was balanced on like which side it was on. Midnight Mass to me seemed very much like it was not on the side of Christianity or really organized religion.
That's interesting. I thought it was balanced.
I thought it was handled with more like of a
Care with respect.
care, more care than Benedetta. But if I think about it, because I just saw, like, let's say hypothetically that Dave Chappelle comes with a gentle hand and care and style to all of his controversial jokes. I just heard a joke about abortion from Bill Burr. And, Bill Burr's style is a lot more like raunchy and loud and, jovial and fun, So even if I wasn't agreeing with what he was saying, I laughed because I was like, oh, that's fun. And so I saw if Dave Chappelle is like the gentleman comic here, I saw maybe Benedetta as more of a Bill Burr to Midnight Mass's Dave Chappelle.
Mm.
Because when I was watching the movie, I didn't think, oh, this is, like I said, I didn't see it as like a serious movie because I didn't think it was going to be a real person. Even if I thought it was a real person, the way it starts out with her as a little kid seemingly having superpowers and this naive, you asked me if I thought she was wise beyond her years. I thought it was setting her up to be naive because she believed so strongly. Oh, this bird poops on this guy, so Jesus must love you. Seems like such a childlike way to come about religion that I was like, oh, her superpower is that she's naive. It's kind of like a, Captain America kind of thing, And so when I was watching the movie, I didn't need it to be, be walking on eggshells. I remember when I was in Italy and I was sitting at Hard Rock Cafe in Italy, and there were these priests telling priest jokes, and it was the most amazing thing to me because I was like, oh, they're a lot more free about the jokes they can tell because they're priests. So there's not going to be somebody that's saying like, oh, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, you better shut up. They're all here and they're all like appreciating each other, and so it's not supposed to be super serious. And so I was watching Benedetta in the first half of the movie. I was having fun because it's kind of like, and I know I'm probably making your point for you if I mention like something like American Pie.
I just want to point out that I don't think the film needs to walk on eggshells. Being respectful, yet getting your point across and why you don't like something doesn't correlate to walking on eggshells. If you don't like something, you can still convey the faults in something and give the emotion that you had at that time when watching it. You can still properly convey that to the consumer without crapping on something that people care or worked on. And that's my issue, is that Benedetta is not that I wanted to walk on eggshells. It's that it feels unconcerned with the people that hold this in high regard. It feels like it doesn't care how they feel at all.
You're talking about, when you say the people that hold this in high regard, you're talking about the church.
I don't care about the church. I'm talking about Christians. I'm talking about people of faith that follow Catholicism.
Very wise thing to say.
And I don't think that makes a good person. I'm not talking about the director in his everyday life. I'm just talking about how this film makes me feel. If I have a strong message or a criticism, yet I don't consider how the people that care about this will feel at all, if I just don't consider that, then I should keep my mouth shut. I don't know, man. And it's so weird because I'm really not religious, but I'm like...
No, you're just a decent human being.
I'm not saying the director's not. I don't know him personally. I feel like I know he has the talent to do better because I can see the sparks that shine in this film. I don't need this film to be super serious. I even told you I laughed at some of the moments when Jesus was on a horse and came to save her and was just slaying people with a sword like he was the Highlander. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There are definitely people that will find this offensive. I'm not gonna lie. I laughed at that part.
I think anything can be laughed at. Some movies you go to get, have a somber tone, and some movies you go for like raucous laughter. And when I saw this movie, I figured most of the people that you're talking about, they would dismiss it offhand because why am I going to go as a devout Christian see a movie about a lesbian nun? How many people are like, regardless of how well it could have been as a movie, just would not see it, right?
I think the Catholicism that you're explaining is still a large section, but I think that kind of ideology that they have where they just reject without question before consuming, I think that's more of 90s Catholicism. I think now a lot more people are open minded. If you are in America and you're watching just
Yeah.
televangelists, then yeah, they're probably going
No,
to fall
I
into your
think over
category.
time things get better. But when I was watching the movie, I wasn't thinking, like, I certainly wasn't thinking it was putting Christianity in a good light, but I was feeling like, and maybe I just wasn't being considerate, but I felt like it was made well in that, it has a lot of villains among the church. I saw them as villains. You saw them differently, which is ironic because I would think the better you see them, the less you'd be saying what you're saying. But I saw pretty much everybody in the church hierarchy, pretty much everybody, Mother Superior and above, were not real believers, right? I thought that they were just movers and shakers. They were politicians working for a company, right? They're thinking about the discussion that you mentioned with the abbot is all about money. Oh, this might bring money. Oh, it's not about whether the miracles are real.
His skepticism is erased.
Well,
He's still
later
very
on,
self-serving, the
when
abbot.
his skepticism, you would say, is erased, I thought it was a funny scene when they're talking to the nuncio and they're like, "Oh, you better not kill her because then we'll be screwed." I felt like, oh yeah, that rings true to me because even if he doesn't believe all that much in miracles, he's nobody's immune to fear, right? And when fear takes hold, it's kind of like when kids are like, "Oh, I'm never going to turn to my parents," but then when they get older, like, and things seem overwhelming, they kind of revert to this familiar way of thinking, right? So just because someone's praying in their last moments doesn't mean that they're they were thinking about.
The Nuncio, I don't think he's a good person.
No.
I think this film has villains, but I don't consider, again, we're going to go into shades of gray. I think that this film more so just has a lot of flawed people.
Yeah, and I appreciated that.
I do too. I think that there are some villains, but for the most part, it's just extremely flawed people.
Isn't that an amazing thing?
No, I'm telling you that I agree with that.
It's hard. It's just hard for me to imagine making this movie as fun as it was, but being more, toning down being more respectful. Because what would it look like the movie that you're talking about that if it had been better? Because you mentioned one of the things you mentioned there were scenes with a sex toy, right?
Yeah, they used the Virgin Mary statue as a sex
I
toy.
agree that was distracting.
It was salacious.
I would be wholly fine. I would still love the movie. If you hadn't had that in the movie, I would still love the movie.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Okay.
I don't want to project how I feel on you. I feel that it was done to incite rage. Like, haha, look what I did.
I don't. So there's two things that happened. One, when you told me, because I didn't know beforehand, who the director was and what he had done before, I lost a little bit of respect for the movie because I felt like, oh, maybe all these meanings that I'm deriving, maybe he didn't put them in there because he just likes throwing stuff at the wall. But also, if I look at that, it's also like he's likes having fun. Starship Troopers has a lot more fun tone than maybe it should have, right?
Isn't why you're having fun important? That sounds weird to say, but it's in this context.
Yes, because I like looking at myself and being like, why do I have this emotional reaction, analyzing it and coming to the answer. But there's two things with that too. Number one, if you come to the answer, if you laugh and then you ask yourself, why am I laughing at this? And you come to the answer, oh, it's because I'm a jerk. Then, like, A, maybe you shouldn't have laughed. But also B, it's valuable that you laughed and came to that conclusion because if you hadn't had that emotional reaction, you wouldn't have learned that about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having a joke about something serious and like dark can still be good for people, even if you're not considering it at a higher level, I never watched the movie thinking, oh, this is gonna, like, I was watching the movie thinking, who could I watch this with and who would not be upset? But some of the people that I was like, oh, they would be upset. I was never worried so much about the Christianity as much as I was worried about the sexual content because I know people that are uncomfortable around certain, sexual topics and issues, right? So when I was thinking about Christians, like I know some Christians that, they go to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Not that means that much, but it's hard for me to depict, what's
it
in
can
art.
mean nothing or it can mean a lot. It's either or.
Right, but I know Christians that they probably wouldn't like this movie
Mm-hmm.
and wouldn't appreciate it as like they would probably agree with you that it's disrespectful for Christians, but they would probably say that regardless. Like even if it was a movie that you thought was the best movie ever, I feel like they would come to that conclusion because it's about a lesbian nun, you know?
I think you're stereotyping a large category of Christians, and I don't think that's fair.
I may be, but when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking about it this way. The way most of the church is stereotypically supposed to view homosexuality means that even if let's say I'm hypothetically like big, I'm a priest or something, right? I'm big in the Catholic Church, and I don't have a problem. Maybe I have tons of gay and lesbian friends, right?
Mhm.
If I see a movie that comes out like Benedetta, and hypothetically, I don't know that Benedetta was a real person. I know this is getting less and less likely as a character. So I'm this person who maybe I even like, I have fun with gay people and I have friends, and right. If I'm seeing the movie, I'm still gonna think like, oh, this is gonna be like a movie that's gonna piss off Christians. Like that's what I would go into it thinking, because most Christians, I would assume, would not be very receptive to this idea. If I'm at a Christian like film company, I would expect that they're just out of hand going to reject, like, what are the lesbian nun movie? No, we're not going to make that, you know? So I don't think it's because necessarily there's just an overloaded majority of the Christian church is homophobic. I think that, even the people that aren't homophobic in the Christian church are going to look at homosexuality as being on the other side, kind of an enemy to the Christian church, because that's the way these things have been set up, So I don't think I'm crazy to think that people will think that this is not a movie for Christians.
I wasn't calling you crazy for thinking that, and I wasn't saying you were wrong for thinking that. I disagreed when you kept stating it as a majority. I think that you're speaking from the perspective of an American Christian, and you're non-Christian now. I do think you have some holdover resentment, which I do at times. Maybe you truly don't. I'm not the one to say it as fact. I'm just saying what I think.
Yeah.
And
everything's relative.
There are different sects. That's hard to say. SECTS.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I know, but to me, it sounds like I said sex with a lisp.
I know what you're worried you're saying.
There are different sections when it comes to Christianity, and people absorb their faith in different ways. But of course, I agree with you that some people are not going to get this light of day. They're going to be like, lesbian, none? No. Jesus slaying people on a horse? No.
Yeah. And I told you, this to you may seem very irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And I apologize for whatever feelings you feel. No, I feel like it's super relevant. But there is a movie, another movie other than this movie, I'm sorry that I'm making a reference, called Tropic Thunder. And inside that movie is a movie, something Abbey, some Devil's Abbey or something, in which there's two monks at a monastery who have a homosexual relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And that trailer for the movie maybe infected my mind, because it's made, obviously it's in a comedy, right? So it's a dramatic, like erotic fantasy movie inside a comedy. So it's always going to be colored with comedy. But also there's this tension, there's this thriller aspect to the trailer that even if you strip away some of the comedy, it's still this like fun, Wild Things-esque movie. So when I was going into Benedetta, I was looking at it from the perspective of this gay monk movie, which was in the world of Tropic Thunder, not meant to be, I mean, you might say it was meant to piss off Christians, but it was meant to be like an Oscar contender. The Robert Downey Jr. character in that movie was always going for like the next Oscar, right? So this movie was like a parody of an Oscar contender, right? And so I look at Benedetta as a vehicle for actors. It gives specifically the main character, but also a lot of other characters too, a lot of crazy acting to do, right? And I felt like that happens in movies where it's like, oh, we want to show off our actors. We want to show, just like those movies where, somebody will be playing an evil character, like two roles, either like a split personality or, it gives the actors a lot to do, and just, they can go wild with it. And you want them to go wild with it because that's what you're doing in the movie. Kind of like in a Kung Fu movie, you want them to see, or like Fast and Furious maybe is better. You want to see crazy stunts, crazier and crazier stunts, right? So yes, I could envision a movie, and maybe it would have been a better movie if you had taken out this sex toy, especially since there's certain things about the sex toy physically and like tonally and character wise that don't make any sense, because that was like the only thing she had from her mother. So why is she not going to be pissed that this girl just, without asking, whittled it down into a penis shape? But even if you take that out, I feel like there's this element of like, they're trying to push the stand, like what you're willing to take. Yes. But a lot of good cinema, a lot of films that like people.
Yeah, but it's the reason why they do it. It's the reason why
But
they
the
do it.
reason, even if the reason is to piss people off, and I'm not going to say they are, because if I look at Showgirls, I don't think Showgirls was. I think he's just trying to have fun a lot of the time. But even if the reason was to piss people off, I look at it and I look at sometimes people talk about people who are like a drag queen or people that are like flamboyant, right? And they'll be like, oh, I don't have a problem with gays. But if they just weren't so flamboyant, if they didn't act like that, if they didn't shove it in my face, it wouldn't be a problem, right? And the instinctual reaction I've seen from some people for that is like I'm gonna be me, And if I was to change, if I was gonna tone it down, it wouldn't be for you to make you feel more comfortable, because I shouldn't have to do that, right? I should be able to do whatever I want to do, right?
Yeah.
And so the initial reaction for that might be to tone it up, because it's like you think that you can,
Because they feel offended.
yeah, you think you can tone me down, but I'm going to show you that you can't, that you shouldn't even be able to. You shouldn't even consider the possibility that, what I'm doing over here should have anything
So
to
that
do with it.
scenario, the people that are like, "Oh, I don't have a problem with people that are gay, just don't be flamboyant or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
There are people that say that are extremely ignorant and homophobic. The other side to that
Mm-hmm.
is there are people that are poor with their words. What they really want to say is, "I don't like loud, boisterous personalities." Does that make sense?
Yeah, I figured you would have the right nuanced vision of that, because you're more of an introvert and not about that life, right?
Yeah.
But when I look at it and I talk to people like
What
that,
you mean
they're
not
like,
about that
oh.
life? What you mean? What you mean? Trying to say.
When I talk to people like that and they're like, oh, they're shoving it in my face,
Yeah.
and they're talking, like, if they're talking about people, some people are obnoxious, right? But if they're talking about movies, I'm like, don't watch that movie. People, I've had to sit through people talking about Lightyear, because Lightyear's friend was a lesbian, in a hologram in one scene, had like
You might know more hateful people than me.
well, but the thing is, like, if it's a movie, it's different, right? But in terms of a movie, just because some people are gonna not like it doesn't mean you shouldn't make that movie. Those people just maybe are not gonna like it. Like, that's okay.
I think that Benedetta has the right to be made.
Well, it sounded like you were saying it would be a better movie if it was more respectful.
I would have enjoyed it more. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm worried I would have had a lot less fun if it hadn't been as raucous.
I think that's because you intrinsically, it feels like you don't feel that being
I don't care about
respectful.
Christians.
No, being respectful and being hilarious and raunchy are not able to be cohesive.
I think they can be. It's just very freeing when like I said about the priests that I met in Hard Rock Cafe that were talking about telling priest jokes. It's very freeing when you have to worry less, when you're around people and you have to worry less about, what you're going to say, and that people are going to take what you say and not immediately think hateful things, right?
I mean, obviously, you're not gonna please everybody. I think a lot of how we feel about Bayonetta, me and you, although it's
Benedetta.
similar in it. I said Bayonetta didn't. Fuck.
I was weighing. I was like, should I flip a coin to see if I should?
Was that the first time I did it?
Yeah, that's the first time this time.
So here's the thing. In I don't know if this is hypocrisy. I feel like it's hypocrisy. Maybe it's not. I feel that Benedetta, while enjoyable, is also very unbalanced. Do you feel that way?
It is. It has a lot of tones, right?
Do you feel that Benedetta nails what it's attempting to do?
I felt like it did it very well.
You know what Benedetta reminds me of? Yeah. You know when you would be doing a game jam and somebody would have like all these fucking cool ass ideas, yeah, but they didn't have anybody in their team that was the person to rein it in. So when the game was due, they weren't fucking done because everybody wanted to. Let's have this character fly. Let's have this character shoot ninja stars. They had too many fucking ideas and not enough time or skills to do it. That's what Benedetta feels like. It's very perplexing and polarizing because if somebody says, oh, Benedetta is ambitious, I feel like Benedetta would be like, fuck ambition. I feel like Benedetta's just doing shit.
But I feel like it's such a complete movie. Like, I don't feel like it left anything that it didn't mean to just leave open. Like there are some movies like Bad Luck Banging, if you remember.
Yeah.
That's a movie that I feel like they were excited to bring their ideas on screen, but their ideas didn't really all coalesce, right? But all the ideas in Bayonetta, I felt like were in service to
all the
movie.
ideas in what?
Oh my God, that's the first
Yes.
time you did that to me.
Hell yeah. All of the ideas in
Benedetta, all the ideas in Benedetta come together to form like a complete story. Like, I feel like it's saying something, and I felt more like it was saying something powerful.
You're lying.
No, what? No, because I was asking the movie because I was like, oh, you know what I think is happening? Why they have all these ridiculous sexual situations.
Mhm.
And then at the end, it's like, oh, maybe you should have just turned it down and people would have listened to you more. I felt like, oh, that's similar to a friend of mine who, people were like, oh, maybe if he would just turn it down,
Yeah.
like just maybe you should turn down your judgment so much is what I'm thinking the message at the end about the sexual stuff in Benedetta is. In my mouth I was saying Benedetta, but in my brain I was saying Benedetta, and I was so scared I stopped myself half word.
Benedetta feels like a collection of ideas.
But I felt like it comes to a head. It comes to a climax where everything happened for a reason so that we could get these characters to this point. Even Felicita, she has like a climax with everybody else. And the Nuncio and Benedetta and Bartolomeo, they all have this climax at the same time in the movie. It's amazing.
And I enjoyed it. And Benedetta is a collection of ideas that
I'm sorry.
completes a story, but has no fucking message that's clear.
I disagree.
That's not fair for me to say.
I
And you
think
saying
it's
that, hold
inflammatory.
on.
Okay.
It's not fair for me to say because you said you disagree, and I agree. Now, hearing you say it, I realized that I was overstating. When we first reviewed this, you said that Benedetta is like a widespread shotgun that doesn't hit the mark. Some of the bullets do, some of the bullets don't. Yeah, I agree with that still. It doesn't quite hit the mark on everything. Some things, it resolves itself, but it resolves itself for me to a degree that's unsatisfactory. And it's not because it was too ambitious. The reason why it crumbled under the weight of its ambition is because it didn't consider the weight of each thing that led to it being ambitious. I feel like I need to say this. I watched an episode of Black Jesus on Adult Swim, and I laughed my ass off. I was cracking up. But you know what? Black Jesus knows what it is. It doesn't try to do a billion things. Black Jesus knows what it is. Benedetta doesn't know what the fuck it is. And that's my issue. Me and you are out and we're marching and we're fighting for equality. Yeah. And then we get interviewed and they ask you, what is this movement about? Why are you fighting for equality? And you say it, you're very confident in your answer. It's very detailed. You could tell that you've really been reading about everything and you really feel passionate about it. And then they look at me and they're like, Kip, what about you? And I'm like, I heard we was getting free beers after this. I have no fucking concrete foundation to go off of, nor do I give a shit. And it's like, I may have done something
good
that led to a movement, but I'm so fucking stupid that I don't even know it. And I don't feel like Benedetta is stupid. I don't even think the person that I'm representing in this situation is stupid, but I take pity on them. I take pity on them because it could have been such a better experience for them.
Maybe I'm another thing that would make me compromised in my vision of it is that sometimes I look at a movie and I'm like, oh, it could have been so much better because you could have done this and this and this and this. Right? But I was watching it and it was such an adventurous ride for me. I wasn't thinking, oh, what should happen next? I was thinking, like, I wonder what's going to happen next. And then something happened next. And I was so overjoyed at just the ride. And maybe it shouldn't be a ride if it's about a real person, but I appreciated the ride. Like, to me, it was like the cake came out great. And I might be thinking, like, I thought you were going to make carrot cake. This is a rum cake, but the rum cake is so amazing.
I will say that I think that so many of the things that you said are valid. Again, I want to repeat to the viewers, I did enjoy this movie somewhat. Okay. I did.
Whispering.
I think it could have been better.
He could have been.
I just wanted him to consider other people's feelings in his writing. And when I think he sat down, I don't even know if he did the screenplay. I just know he directed it. But I'm just going to, let's say he did.
Well, it's an adaptation anyway.
I can assure you that this book is not like this film. Let's not.
Let's not.
When I watch this, my issue is that this person doesn't feel concerned, not just for the other people's feelings, but for the message.
You were a lot more careful with your words, and you're a lot more considerate person than I am. So
that's not true.
So that's, I mean, no, I have to stomach it when you call me intelligent. You're the considerate one, and I'm the intelligent one. So there's a large possibility that there's a lot of inflammatory stuff in here that just didn't hit me because I'm just not considering all the people that would be hurt by this. I think it's just, some people are offended by some things.
Yeah.
And I kind of tend to pride myself on not being offended by things. So that I can watch more things. So if I'm watching something, I'm not going to be thinking as much about like, oh, people are going to be offended by this, because people in general, I feel like, I'm going to sound like a bad guy. I'm going to feel like a bad guy saying this, but people in general, I feel like tend to be too offended. I don't feel like you have to go that far to be like inflammatory. But I also recognize maybe me desensitizing myself to being offended has made me less likely to know when something is offensive. I certainly see that.
Yeah,
Outside of that, though, it's a fun, like, adventurous, sexy movie.
sexy is a weird word to use. I mean, I guess because they. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know.
Well, because when I see a movie, right, it's just like any romance. Any romance has a tension where it's like, will they get together? Won't they? Will they? Right?
Yeah,
And once they kiss at the end of the romance movie, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just going to sound crazy at this point, but TV shows are a better example too, where once they kiss and like you're supposed to have an actual relationship after that, there's a lot of tension lost because people want to see that build up that like, oh, I can't touch her because she has a boyfriend, or oh, we're so far away, with long distance relationship, I wish I could be so close, and they're holding each other but in their minds, and and just that pull that's pulling them away, and they're trying to fight to get together, right? That is what romance movies are made for.
that's not in Benedetta.
Well, there's a little stuff like that. There's a lot of tension in the beginning of the movie.
I'm talking about as far as like people trying to fight to be together. The only person that's trying to fight is Bartolomea, and nobody cares about Bartolomea.
Yeah, it's sad, but there is that tension where she's pulling away herself because she wants to be a good Christian, but here's this woman who's like pulling her towards her, and so she's got that pull. That tension is what it's there for. There's not a lot of actual romance, just like most romance movies aren't actually about an actual romance and keeping an actual relationship alive. It's about that initial like spark, the little flames and the kindling in the beginning. That's what most romances are about, and that I think Benedetta has that.
Well, there are two things. The two things that I think that Benedetta did okay as far as like the messages and through lines.
Mm-hmm.
I think it showed how not being the mother that you could be and should be can impact your child. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it shows how a horrible upbringing and prolonged abuse can lead to reaching out to anyone for some type of love, the proper love that you desire and need in your life through Bartolomea. I don't even think Bartolomea is necessarily lesbian. It's possible. I don't think she just only has an attraction to women. I think Bartolomea just looked for someone that would treat her like they fucking cared about her, which Benedetta does not do.
No.
The one thing I want to add before I forget, and then you can ask me what you're going to ask, is that when you were talking, one thing I realized, this particular aspect I always felt, Benedetta is concerned with Benedetta. She's a very self-serving person, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've said this countless times in many different ways, but I never realized the connection between the film as a screenplay and Benedetta as a character within the screenplay. They're both very self-serving. They just want to do what they want to do, and that's it. What hurts me is that that's what this film amounts to. It's something that's going to be memorable, not through its profound themes, but through its salaciousness. And that's disappointing. Okay, what are you going to ask?
Would you say because she was treated so bad in the past, she's lowered her standards for what she's willing to accept in a relationship?
I don't know, like Benedetta's pretty good looking. I think she wants love. When you have that type of upbringing and you don't get the love and nurturing that you deserve, I think she was immature. I think in her mind she truly felt that this wasn't a whirlwind romance. This was a true and pure love, and it was her soulmate. I think that's how she felt. But to someone that may be experienced looking in, they might be looking at it as like you just needed a mother's love or a father's love and you didn't get it. So now you're looking for love in all the wrong places. Any type of attention, any bit of it is going to feel like that for you. Maybe not from a man, because a man was the one that abused you and treated you horribly. So maybe that turned you off to men. That's understandable. Let's imagine that at the end when Bartolomea asked Benedetta to just run away with her and they could go live and travel around, and Benedetta was like, and do what? Beg for food, use our bodies to make money. And then Bartolomea looks at her and she's like, well, at least it's freedom. Bartolomea just wants someone by her side because she never had it. She wants someone to confide in because she never had it. She wants someone to love her as she loves them in a way that's natural and respectful because she never had it. And let's say that they did go off, but they're just running away, surviving by any means necessary, but they got each other. Guarantee you the motherfuckers would have broke up 2 months later.
Yeah, I think that's a good reading of Benedict. I think the way you've made me see Benedetta more clearly, because I was going back and forth during the movie, like, who is she really? And I agree with your assessment there when I look back on, especially that last conversation. I agree she is very self-serving. And I like that aspect of her character because I think she has actually convinced herself that she is, a good Christian and a prophet,
She's very intriguing.
but also she's doing it for herself. And I think that's an amazing character. Like, I like her more now.
I think that Benedetta leans into faith so much because she doesn't have much going for her outside of her faith.
Yeah, she wants love.
I think she doesn't know who she is. It's like the person that devotes their whole life to being a dancer, yeah? And then they get injured and they can't do it anymore. And they're
Yeah,
like,
you ask them what they like, and they're like, I don't know.
that's Benedetta. So now she's the one asking Bartolomeo, please come back so you can be my emotional comfort because I'm hollow, I'm not complete. And then Bartolomea is so fraught, her brain from a lifetime of abuse, that she again turns to Benedetta at the end and it's like, please, we could do this, we could do that. And then when Benedetta is Benedetta as usual, she's like, no, I have to go off. This is my calling and help these people and leave. And Bartolomeus again by herself.
Yeah, she's a tragic character.
I found her annoying in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do find her character annoying. But when I think about her character critically, I pity her and I respect her. And when I think about the film critically, he's a provocateur.
Right. That's that's kind of what I felt like with The Lighthouse, and I mentioned that before, where they're throwing stuff in the movie, not necessarily, for a specific one reason or another.
That's funny where you don't find acceptance, I find acceptance, and then where you find acceptance, I don't find acceptance. And then there are times where we agree. We didn't agree on The Lighthouse. But then it's like, this shows how stupid we are. We watch Prayer and we're like, yeah, it had predators. It had predators and it's dope. Come on, chick, it was dope. That is Benedetta. Mad Cat found the film enjoyable. I found it somewhat enjoyable. You can check it out now. You can check it out at the time of this recording.
You can check it out.
It's on Hulu. That's where I watched it.
If you can go back in time, you can check it out during the time of this recording.
That's it. Adios.
Ciao.